Welcome to You Matter in Business. Your hosts today are Ariel, me, and Miriam.
Your heart, your brand story, and your success because you matter in your business.
Welcome back to You Matter in Business. We are again with Kaitlin Healy this week, and we're going to talk about some exciting stuff, some business and life, and how the principles of both can really help us in both ways. Welcome back, Kaitlin.
Hi.
Hi. And we have no Miriam again, one more week with no Miriam. She did this for me and I'm doing it for her. She's with her son. They're
Family
having a good
first.
time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's one of the challenges of having children on the other side of the ocean.
Yeah.
It,
When they're here, they're here.
yeah, when they're here and she's here, and I'm 100% with that. So that's good. Okay, so let's talk about challenges this week. Many of our listeners are business owners or career women. So they could be C-suite, they could be higher level. What have your clients struggled with the most? And how have you coached them to overcome the challenges? What would you pick one of the biggest challenges you see in the workforce?
Yeah, the biggest challenge I feel like we see, both Manny and I, is really this lack of trust within an organization. And I think when people initially hear that, they think immediately just like the culture overall of the organization, but it's so much deeper than that because trust is actually much more like a spider web. There is an individual connection between an employee and every other employee that is a part of that organization. And usually it's only that web of people who are in your immediate purview, like maybe your direct reports and then the person that you report up to. But when we have a lack of trust, it does a few things. It prevents honest communication, which is the core of what we do in business and in life every day is communicate.
Honest communication,
And honest
words. Yeah.
communication, of course. And when we don't have honest communication, our needs go unmet. And so in our personal life, that's I need a hug or I need a compliment or, tell me this dress makes me look nice or whatever. And in the business world, it's I need more training in this area. I'm having a conflict and I need someone to mediate a conflict for me. Or I made a mistake, I need help making it right or I need help making sure I don't make this mistake again. And so there's those initial things. And then when we think about how a lack of trust prevents development, when you don't feel like you have trust, you don't swing for the fences. You don't try to innovate, to improve, to expand. You remain very small. And so then it makes it really hard for your business to innovate and expand. You know, we have clients in a healthcare arena, and at the core it's like we want to help people live healthy lives. Like who wouldn't want to expand and innovate and make that bigger? Everyone does. But if you're afraid of if I say the wrong thing, if I don't file the paperwork the right way, you know what? I'm just going to stay in my lane. I'm not going to bring my ideas or my frustrations to the table. Resentment starts to fester. And then you might have a mutiny on your hands, which I've seen happen in a workplace before. Oh, yeah, Bailey's going, I don't like that either. That's my pup, y'all. Sorry. So yeah, like the lack of trust, it permeates in every direction. So like you might be a middle manager and you don't trust the people you oversee, they don't trust you, and then your senior leaders are coming to you and they're like, "Well, I don't really trust you because you're not getting through to these people and I trusted you. That's your whole job is to support these people." And so it really starts to create fraction within the organization and nothing can be super successful when it's fractionated like that.
So, just curious, have you noticed now I've been around a little longer than you, so I remember old corporations and how they functioned and how they've metamorphosed through the years. I personally have chosen never to swim in big oceans. I did once and decided that was not my world. I don't like the corporate environment,
Hmm.
and I worked in a company and it had an extremely sick culture. Like, I mean, it was diseased.
How'd that feel?
It was horrible. I hated it.
Yeah.
And honesty was not allowed. In fact, I lost my
Mm,
job because I was honest.
look at
So,
that.
which I was okay with because I don't want to work in that
It
environment.
wasn't meant for you anyway at the point. Yeah.
No. And so I've seen the ugly side of a culture that is competitive, that is very restrictive. Like the sales team wasn't allowed to talk to the manufacturing team, and the all of these departments that are supposed to come together and work together to create a good product all had their own little agendas.
Yep.
And
Silos. We refer to those as silos.
yeah, I
Yep.
mean it was just a crazy place. And I'm not the kind of person who kisses rears. I just am friendly to everyone. So
Same.
I don't care who you are, right? If you're this owner of the company, I'm going to say hello to you. Everyone else is like hiding in their office and pretending to work. And, they're all like, oh, he's here. Oh, and they're all freaking out. And I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And here I am, this little young whippersnapper still in college. I was interning there. And my boss, that was the most threatening thing I could have done, is just
That
talk
you
to
said
this
hi to the
gentleman.
CEO.
And I went in his office and
Wow.
we had a good chat. Just about life. Nothing. I didn't expose all the things I thought was horrible. You know what I mean? That wasn't the conversation, but I just had a conversation with the boss.
Mhm.
I overstepped my bounds. And I'm like, what an unhealthy
Super
environment.
unhealthy.
Blech.
Super unhealthy.
No, thank you. I think I'll pass.
Yeah.
So I stuck with small companies after that, which is a little more, you can kind of feel the air and a culture in a small company much better than you can in a big one.
Absolutely.
Those you kind of learn over a month or 2 or 3, and it's like, oh, and you're stuck. So I don't play that game. But in your case, do you see old school business practices that might have worked in the 50s that are still around in the upper management levels that do not work with today's workforce? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still new in my career, so Manny could maybe speak to this a little deeper, but there's definitely I think globally in the professional world, we're in a big state of change and it definitely doesn't happen overnight. COVID shook a lot of things up because it helped people realize their time is more valuable. Maybe I want to work from home, maybe I want to flex schedule, maybe I want to commute. For a lot of people, I think too, I think it's becoming more and more obvious that middle managers have the hardest jobs, at least here in America, because they're not just the worker bee who puts their head down and gets the job done. And they're not the CEO or the C-suite who's like this visionary over another set of leaders who's then responsible for results. They're this struggling middle breed who they're just getting beaten down a lot of the time. And it's really heartbreaking because they're ultimately responsible for more of the results than I think the only other person is the COO who oversees all of those people ultimately. And yeah, I think, it's all industry specific, obviously. But if we look at I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example, maybe like a marketing agency, does a marketing agency need to go into the office from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? I don't know. I've never worked at a marketing agency, but I would imagine there's room for flexibility. Now, obviously, if you work on an oil rig, you can't call it in from home. So, that'd be cool. That'd be
There's
pretty neat.
logistical problems with that.
There's
You're
some
right.
logistical problems there. Maybe you've got a drone. Maybe you can fly a drone from home and it can be doing the work for you, And I think, we're laughing about that, but I think there's implications of that coming in the next 20, 30, 40 years, ultimately. But I think the social dynamics at work, to your point, they definitely exist and they're toxic. If I am a new employee and it's my 4th day on the job, I come into work on Thursday and my coworker points out to me that that's the CEO who just walked in the door, I'm definitely going to walk up and greet them. But I think there's a lot of managers who, similar to your situation, would frown upon that. They would say, know your place. Well, I know
Stay in
my
your
place.
lane.
Stay in your
Yep.
lane. I know my place. My place is this village of a business that we have built. And if I want to go to the chief and just go hi, like, I'm really excited to be a part of your organization. And here's a little bit about my skills and where I see myself being able to maybe grow and contribute to this village that you have built that I am inspired by. It's counterintuitive. Like, why wouldn't you go do that? Anyone would want to do that. Like, that's someone who hopefully, ideally, like, you've gone on LinkedIn, you've learned a little bit about them, you aspire to learn from and become, to a degree, the type of professional that they are. And so the fact that then there's this like fleet of middle managers who are like putting the kibosh on this, it's very strange. And it's super toxic. So I think that's the thing, like these old ways of stay in your lane, don't speak up, skirting accountability. That's something, unfortunately, a lot of middle managers get stuck into doing too. Well, it's not my
Oh,
fault.
it's the sales
Oh,
department. No, it was the engineering that
well, it's
messed up.
not
No,
my
it was
fault.
the
It's or not even blaming other departments. Oh no, well, it's my worker bees. My worker bees
oh
didn't
yeah,
do their stuff. Well, then you need to look inward and realize, what did you fail to do or do too much of as a manager that you didn't get the results? Because it's like, I don't know, it's like the commissioner of like the NBA going to a basketball coach and being like, "Why didn't you win the game?" And he's like, "Oh, well, Kobe sprained his ankle and Shaq got the flu." And well, I don't care. You've got the resources to make the results happen, and you just chose not to pivot. That's not on them. That's on you for not taking control. So,
exactly,
but then
exactly.
also your middle manager might be living in a space where they don't have trust and they're full of conflict, and so they can't make those moves the way they would want to. So, yeah. Though I think that just like the way we choose to conduct business, there's this this factory worker mindset, and work is so much more niche these days. And a lot of big organizations want to stick with that manufacturing corporate framework, but people are more people. And I tell people, like, business is personal. And people are always kind of like jarred by that. But I joke when I go to a networking event sometimes, if I get a chance to do like a 30-second pitch, raise your hand if you're a person, and every hand goes up. Put your hands down. Raise your hand if you work in a business or you own a business, and every hand goes up. And so we need to start adopting the fact, like, I'm not saying every day we got to come in and do kumbaya, and I don't need to know about your daughter's boyfriend broke up with her, or this kid got this on their math test, or I'm going to Cabo, or like whatever. Like, we don't have to know every single detail, but I think we really need to tap into the humanity and the soul of every person. And then that translates to the soul, which is ultimately the culture of the organization being healthier. If, you can have the best cart. Like back in the day, we did everything with carts and horses. And you might have the Rolls Royce of carts. Like your buggy it's the best. The wheels are great. The seats are comfy. You even got suspension. I don't know how you figure that out on a buggy. But the cart's great. That's the machine. That's the system of the business. You might have the best system in the world, but if your horse is malnourished, if it has flies in its eyes, if you haven't taken care of its hooves in a while, that's the soul that's going to move your buggy along. If it's not tended to, at a baseline core, I feel like I can trust people, I can have healthy conflict, and I am inspired to remain committed to my mission and vision. Your cart's not going anywhere. And I think people are more and more enlightened to the fact that, like, yeah, I do have a soul, and my soul does have a place of belonging in the organization I choose to commit more hours to than my own children for most working parents. And if employers don't get on board with that, they're going to lose out on excellent talent that's going to go to organizations that have figured it out, or those people are going to choose to become entrepreneurs similar to you and I.
Yeah, exactly. You don't fit in the box, you create your own. So, coaching is different than consulting. At
Mhm.
least I believe so. But I would love to hear from your perspective how they're different and then how you communicate that to a client when you are selling them your services.
Yeah, I'm grateful for this question. I just answered this at a panel a few weeks ago, and I got some really positive feedback on it. So I'll bring a third professional into the mix when
Okay.
I do this. So when I think about being a coach, I think about living in the best of both worlds of a consultant and a therapist.
Okay.
Typically, and this is all my perspective and knowledge, so grain of salt and no insult to these industries if I misspeak, but my perception of a therapist is someone who on average is more focused on the past. They are very high in providing accountability and asking questions to prompt self-reflection and self-growth, but they will not provide you answers. That is a brief summary of therapying. Therapying.
They'll provide you with a doctor who will provide you with pills, which
Yeah, and that could be another tool, another professional in that toolkit. But they're not there to solve your problem. They're there to create a space that is safe and self-reflective for you to solve your problem.
right.
And when we go to the other end of the spectrum, we look to a consultant. They do look to the past to inform where we've been, where we
Assessments.
are
Yep.
now. They assess, but they're typically looking at where we're at now and where we're going in the future.
Yep.
And they have a much more prescriptive model. They're not there to listen from you. They're there to do their own assessment of the situation at hand. And then they say, based on what we have assessed, this is our understanding of your organization. And based on the goals that you have for the future, where you'd like to end up, this is the model of actions and resources and partners that we are prescribing to you. And then that's where the journey ends. They're very hands off. It's not every month we're checking in on your goals. And so that's where coaching comes in. We're looking at the full spectrum of we're looking to the past. Where did our wounds and our trauma within our organization come from to create a toxic culture or to create a bad product or damaged reputation? Where are we right now? And where do we want to go for the future? So, a lot of our initial training goes into upending damage from the past and putting in new tools in place of those ineffective behaviors or systems. We then get a new baseline of where we're at in present day. And then, based on being at a healthier place in present day, we set some benchmarks, typically 90 days out, a year out, and 3 years out. And as we move through time, we continually adjust what those benchmarks are, what the small objectives within them are, and we stick along for that journey. So we don't prescribe, hey, here's what you should do to solve your problems. Now go do it. Every month, depending on the client, sometimes we do monthly check-ins. Usually a monthly check-in's happening with maybe just the CEO or COO. We're typically meeting with a senior leadership team on a quarterly cadence. And we do so on average for 1 to 2 years. So, a consultant is someone you might have come in once a year or once every other year. They do an assessment. They kind of are the nitro to blasting you to that next benchmark. A therapist, depending on your unique situation, might be something that you do for a few months, you take a few months off, you do for a few months, you take a few months off, might be someone you're with for a decade or 2 decades. Like everyone's situation with therapy is very niche. With coaching, we try to stick to a 1 to 2 year model because we don't want to become someone that you're reliant upon. That's essentially hiring an employee. And that's not what I'm signing up for because I like flexibility. I like being able to do this work with multiple industries, multiple clients, multiple personalities. So it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be like, I think fitness is the easiest way to put it. You get a trainer, a certified fitness coach, someone to work with you for a period of time, and then they get you to your new normal baseline. Maybe then a few years go by, everything's going good. Well, oh my gosh, wait, I got in a car accident. I tweaked my neck or my back. Now I need my personal trainer to come back in and say, hey, there's a new lay of the land. We have a new normal. And I need help getting back to the new baseline again. And it might not be what that old baseline was. Oftentimes it's not. It's elevated. It's not bad, but it's different. And And so that's the kind of coach I strive to be. I know coaches who are like, yeah, like people keep me on retainer. I've had a client for 6 years. They won't let me go. That's up to you as the coach. If that's the kind of relationship you want, I love that for you. And maybe that'll become a part of my journey. I'm too new in it to say. But yes, so that's the difference. The in short, the therapist is past focused, getting you to a better present. A consultant is present focused and moving you to the future. And a coach is the full spectrum and is there to be accountable at every stage.
Interesting. Just take a moment for a slight interruption. We wanted to share some exciting news.
Exceptional women professionals often struggle to communicate their expertise. Rediscover, refine, rebrand women's retreats provide a transformative, intimate experience that help clarify your unique identity. So you are self-confident and courageous, stand out in your industry, and enjoy effective marketing.
Join us on one of these retreats. Go to arielfaith.com and choose your date that fits your schedule. Reserve your exclusive spot with a simple deposit, and then enjoy tailored planning tips and details from us to get ready for this inspiring experience. In the meantime, if you can like, share, and comment on this podcast, we'd appreciate the love. Thank you. You brought up something that's kind of interesting, and we talked about it last week, but it was the understanding of words. Right? So when I hear the word coach, I have an immediate gut negative reaction.
Tell me more.
From my upbringing, right?
Okay.
And I know that, so I don't resonate with the word coach, but I know the world is using the word coach. In fact, my story brand certification just shifted from the word story brand guide to story brand coach. So, which a lot of us weren't too happy about, but the understanding is about the word itself. So when I hear coach, I think of a coach that is a basketball coach, a soccer coach, one of those kind of coaches that push and push and push for excellence, or a gymnastics coach that's, down to the minute little thing to adjust so they're Olympic ready. So for me, that's an unbalanced method of guiding or helping. So that's why I have a negative reaction to that word. I understand that I might be a few that do that, but it's just interesting because even that word can create a challenge for other listeners.
Yeah.
Because there are different styles of coaching. That's one thing I've learned is there are coaches that come in and they're all about accountability. They're kind of like challenging you. They're lashing. So they have kind of I don't know how you describe it. They push and push, and some people need pushing. Other people, you push them, they lock their heels in.
Yep.
And
that's me.
They're going to be stubborn. And even if it's a good idea, they might not pay attention.
Yeah.
So because of the method of coaching, whereas some need to be more walked hand in hand, I will walk with you through the process.
Yes.
Rather than pulling you or pushing you. Right. So I think as a coach, it's very important to understand your comfort as the style of coaching you want to use and who that will resonate with and who it won't. And be able to shift if you have a client that needs more pushing, then you got to step outside your comfort and be a little more pushy. You know what I mean? For them, because it's all about them anyway. If you have a client that is so delicate that if you push, they're going to break
and shut down.
You obviously do not push. You got to work from a different angle, and you've got to have that adaptability to adapt to those situations and recognize them when they happen. And that gets complicated with a whole bunch of people.
It does. It definitely does. Especially when it's different when you're coaching one-on-one. You can be a lot of it more like a chameleon or an octopus. You can really adapt to just the one person in front of you. When you're working in a group setting, if you start changing too much to the tune of one person, and I would assume it's usually the CEO or the COO, you then start losing trust and credibility amongst the rest of the senior leaders. So you do have to a degree, understand like what's the general tone of the room. You would typically even maybe ask the CEO or COO in the discovery call, how do most people react to being pushed? How do most people react to silence? And then that gives you kind of an idea of how you would walk in. I need to reset my search engine. My Yahoo search, when I searched define coach, I want to just jump back to that for a minute. And I won't read all of them, but noun, a tutor who gives private or specialized teaching. I think that's a great definition. And in the context of a verb, hey, no, she's Erin. As a verb, to train or instruct, to give someone extra or private teaching, to teach, coach. And I think it's great to point out like there's different kinds, there's different people with different baselines, and it's important for us to flex. But I think coach, in my mind, is more synonymous with educator. And I think that's what I've always been really passionate about. And it's why I spent so many years in the education realm. But the great thing about being a part of a coaching network also is if I sit down with someone and they demonstrate they have some unique needs that are not inherently strengths of my own, I can either, well, I'll probably do both things. I'll identify it's not my strength. I can still do it, but I might struggle a little bit. And I just want to be transparent in that. And so, having that honest conversation. And then also, if you feel like you need someone who is 100% ready to go, I've got 40 plus other coaches that I can refer you to because I care more about retaining the relationship and getting the results for that person that they want than I do just,
Yes.
frankly, like lining my pocket. Because as I said, I think last week, your reputation is what's going to get you so much further. And especially like I live in a small town, like are we in the same town?
I'm in like right next to you.
You're next to me. Okay. So yeah, probably even a smaller town. And in this town in particular, that's over 100 years old, probably close to 150 at this point, reputation really matters. Like there's a lot of families who have been here multiple generations and they have a lot of impact. And so even if, a client comes to me, a potential client, and hey, this is what I want, this is what I need, da, 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 based on our conversation, it's not a right fit, but I want to take care of you. And I'd like to refer you to these two other people to try out conversations with. I'm happy to make those personal introductions and just give that white glove service because it'll come back to you. The other thing about coaching that I'm grateful for in my unique situation is that rather than going it alone and only having my own strengths and weaknesses to work off of, I chose to partner with someone. And I'm grateful because in the system and soul model, it is abundantly clear to both of us that I am more soul focused and attuned, I think would be a better word. And Manny is much more systems focused. Like he is an electrical engineer by education. He has been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. That's in him. Like systems is like where.
Yeah, he's very analytical.
Very
Yep.
analytical.
Mhm.
He is the one who, even in the face of maybe it'll make someone dig in their heels, he'll push the button. He'll just go, oh, that's the button that needs to get pushed in this conversation. Boom, like no hesitation. And he's ready for whatever the fallout is. I am much more delicate in that way. I make sure we're creating space. Like I'll notice the person in the room who's someone said something and their body language just changed. They've suddenly disengaged or
They've left the building.
they've left the building. They've checked out. Or sometimes it's, every time this one person on the team starts to speak, that person disengages, whether it's positive or negative, regardless of the fact, like someone's gotten burned or they're jaded. And, I'll kind of stealthily like note that to him because if he wants to take a stab at like addressing the conflict, like I'm in a season where I'm treating our relationship almost more of like an apprenticeship. And I'm doing a lot of observing, I'm asking questions so that when I get into the room eventually, when I'm flying solo separate of him, that I can be like, oh, okay, like, well, what would Manny, someone who's more analytical and systems focused, how would he address this situation and kind of like stealing the goggles and lenses from my peer coaches.
Yeah, and just seeing through a different lens.
Yep.
Because we all have our own lens, although we don't necessarily recognize that, but we do.
Yeah.
And then when you're able to identify that somebody else sees from a different vision, that vision can help you, you just kind of try to put on the pieces
Yep. And it's not good or bad, it's different.
Yeah.
There's value.
Exactly.
There's value in every lens.
Yep, absolutely. So when you look at the women entrepreneurs that you know specifically, or women-led businesses, have you ever worked with a woman-led business?
We've got a great woman-led business at the moment. The entire leadership team, women. It's awesome.
Right. That brings its challenges, strengths, and challenges. But what do you find one of the strengths that women-led businesses have, that by observing that women will naturally bring to a business that you might not have learned from a more male-centered?
Yeah. I think just the premise of the soul element is more inherently women focused.
Yeah.
And it's even just in like communication, like women are more likely to have more platonic friendships with other women than men are to have more platonic friendships with other men. Gossip is viewed as like this negative thing, but gossip is just calling to attention a point of conflict. And obviously, if we only stick with gossip, then it's just rumination and it's negative.
Right.
But at least we're going and saying like, this isn't working, or this makes me feel uncomfortable, or we're just expressive a little more. Sometimes it's to benefit, sometimes it's to detriment. So, like there's time and place to all of these things.
Yeah.
And I think also like tying back to that soul element, there is an intuitiveness of a leader we're working with right now. And sometimes it can come across a little curt, but they'll just kind of be like, this is my business. And I don't really care what anyone on the team says. I'm going to do what I want to do because it's my business. And if what I'm doing is so egregious and you think you can do it better, and they've not gone on this level of tangent. But in theory, like if you think it could be so much better off, like you're welcome to go create another organization just like ours. And I think, if a man were to just say all of that, they'd be like, oh, he's such a great leader. And then usually if a woman says something like that, there's a double standard and like, oh, like she's catty or she's the B wordy, or I don't know what we can say on your podcast.
Yep.
And so I feel like overall I try and operate my life pretty non-gendered, like you're a good person or you're a person who has demons and struggles and battles, or you bring value or you don't bring value. And like, but I also recognize that my lens is pretty dismissive of how most of the rest of the world operates. And so I'm trying to pay more attention to like gender themes, gender stereotypes, and silently and in the least manipulative but most manipulative way possible, kind of push my agenda of like, let's leave our sex chromosomes out of the conversation and just communicate with our ideas, our concepts, and our strengths at a values baseline.
That would be nice, but I don't see that actually happening.
I know. That's Caitlin's utopia.
Yeah, but you know what? In some ways, personally, I wouldn't want that, because I think it's important to recognize the differences.
Yeah.
And honor the differences. So it's different to see a difference and fear the difference or persecute against a difference, but it's a different thing to honor it.
To celebrate it.
And you don't have to embrace it as your own. You know what I mean? Men don't need to become women. Women don't need to become men. No. But we need to understand where our strengths and weaknesses are. And it isn't global. There are obviously, stereotypicals, but there are a lot of nuances in between each individual. Like there are women who are way more male thinking than the other woman. So it's not about the gender is just a clue into possibilities.
It's a map, it's not the terrain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can, no matter who we are, we can, male, female, whatever, we can look at, adapt, change, shift, and grow, right? We can learn from our experiences, we can learn from the good ones and the bad ones, and we can move forward,
Definitely.
either gender,
Yeah.
any culture, right? All that stuff can cross all the differences in the world. But we have to be willing to look at ourselves, which is what you talked about in the beginning when you talked
Being
about those
inwardly
two.
sound,
Yeah, you have to be able to look
especially.
at yourself and like yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you don't like and trust and respect yourself,
How are you gonna like and trust and respect anyone else?
you're going to have a hard time in all this. Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll get in your way, which is kind of the way it works.
absolutely.
So that's
And that's kind of that's the season I'm facing right now. Like I acknowledged in the last episode, like I feel like when I looked at like my inwardly sound score, there was a lot of room for improvement. And then I had a little bit of a crisis. I was like, is going into coaching just like me completely abandoning myself? And now I'm like swinging too into people pleasing. And then I reeled it in and I was like, no, like I just happen to be a human who has an innate passion and interest and is fulfilled by doing this kind of work. And I can get swept up in it, but the only way I can do it to the best of my ability is if I'm making myself my number one client and taking care of myself more. So, I've been figuring out small ways to do that, and I'm very impatient. I think that's the Aries in me for anyone who's into astrology. And I think, there's a lot of factors that influence it. And I think part of it is being a woman too, like I'm a single person, I don't have any children, so this is kind of my baby. And there's like, am I doing enough? Am I protecting it? Am I giving it the nourishment it needs? And it's like, no, like even before that, I need to take care of myself, just like how every mom out there needs to really be taking care of herself and like totally recognize way harder done than said, but there's a lot of mamas out there feeling the same way, and I just encourage you to like find your tribe. And that's really the season of life I'm in, like making sure I'm finding people who in those moments where I'm having self-doubt and I'm being too critical or I'm just all up in my feels, and it's very difficult for me to just like even acknowledge that. So taking the time to find people who will be like, hey, like you need to like chill out, like lovingly, you need to chill out, or like the way you're talking about yourself
is
is
cruel.
is cruel and it's crazy. Or I was in a practice life coaching session recently, and my people pleasing like really started to rear up, and I really want to be mindful of that in my coaching. And my coach was just like, I want you to ask the people who love you why they love you, and then I just want you to look at them and tell them they're wrong. Like, just tell them, like, "You're wrong, you're lying," like, just go for it. And I want you to have this new unique experience of, like, being in the presence of people who are upset with you and are not happy, and see if they will fight to stay with you in you being the badass you are, even if you don't see it. I was like, "Oh, I don't know about this," but he's not wrong, you know? So, yeah, it's a journey. It's all a journey.
It is a journey, and the journey never stops. So
No.
it's just a matter of,
It
standing
stops
on a different
once.
piece to a cliff, right? And then you got more to climb, and then you
Yeah.
get a bigger view, and then you climb more on the mountain and you get a bigger view. So what do you have? Like, do you have anything exciting happening? Any passions that you're working on right now? Passion projects? Do you have any, like, I see myself in 6 months, these are my goals for you personally?
Yeah. For me personally, well, this is kind of tied to business, but it's not my business coaching. I am in the process of getting my life coaching certification. And I think through that journey, I am going to continue to cultivate just more and more healthy and healthier and healthier and healthier relationships. And, have been doing some reflecting and been thinking in my life, like, girl, like we've been taking scraps. And like, no more. Like, we need gourmet, we need boutique, we
The table
need
scraps are over.
organic. Like, the table scraps are over. And there's a number of people in my life who already are not the table scrap kind of people. But I am working on saying, like, I want the seat at the gourmet table. It's there. And I'm like, oh no, like, I'll just eat the leftovers. I'm like, no, like, go do the good things. Like, you are deserving of the good things. So I'm working on that. I haven't planned the trip yet, but I won a 2-night stay in Vegas. I'm going to take my dad. We've never done a father-daughter trip. And
cool.
so I was like, hey, like, if you pay for your airfare, I've got the room. I'll pay for my airfare. And I think 2 days is just enough. Like, maybe we'll stay a third day somewhere else or something, but I've got that going on. I have a friend moving into my home. So I'm going to have a roommate again, and I'm looking forward to that. I think most people are probably think I'm crazy, but I'm at a season of my life where I think spending time with a kind, reflective, supportive, accountability partner is going to be a really good thing for me, especially in my business world. And then speaking to like some of just briefly like business goals, I just need to get myself out there a little more. So I am proud to say I booked my first speaking engagement.
Awesome.
So that's great. Outside of this, of course, I'm involved with Rotary. And so I went to one of the other clubs in town and I was like, hey, I'd love to speak. I'd like to get connected with your president to figure out what content is going to be most beneficial to the room. So I left a voicemail for that individual. And so yeah, just like putting myself out there, trying to do some new things. And I think just like really figuring out taking care of myself more. My roommate is very physically active and is very passionate about taking care of their diet. And so, I'm definitely like, I have the diet of a 5-year-old. It's not good. Like, give me chicken nuggets, give me macaroni and cheese,
Quick and easy.
give me a chocolate chip cookie, like. And there's a lot of reasons for facing that path, but I think having someone in the kitchen with me to educate me, to kind of coach me into embracing a level up will be a good thing for me. So, yeah, lots of things on the burners.
Good.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a part of our show.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Enjoyed listening and learning and having your insight, because your insight's very, very different than mine, since I'm way more small company focused versus large company focused. And they share similarities, but they also share there are very different complexities to each.
Absolutely.
Right? So it was enjoyable. I really appreciate you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you got some value. I hope the listeners get value, and thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again. We'll see you all. Actually, hear you all.
Bye, y'all.
See you next episode. After all, it is your brand, your story, and your success, because Ariel and I know you matter in your business.
Thank you for listening to the You Matter in Business podcast. Please follow, share, like, and comment. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Ariel Faith Photography and Enrich Life Coaching. The show notes provide more information on how to contact Ariel and Miriam and any guest speakers who share in our journey together.